Welcome to another exciting episode of Home Sweet Home. I'm Rod.
And I'm Bryce. I wasn't as good as yours.
Sorry, I every now and then I just wake up and I'm going, woo, today's the day.
Today is the day.
It's filled with excitement and opportunity, and you never know what's going to come your way. And so
I'm so glad I wore my thick boots today.
Why? Like there's snow outside?
No. Never mind.
Oh, you're insinuating something else.
Yeah, it did snow. It did snow. We got a little bit of snow over the last few days.
Well, it is wintertime.
Here in Tejas.
Yeah, well, it'll be gone. That's the great thing about winter.
It'll be 80 degrees tomorrow.
Yeah. Woo, that white crap's gone. I was hoping and thinking maybe we could talk about something on a serious note today. Would that be possible?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're headed into that. It's getting towards, spring, and with spring comes spring break. Spring break, we get, we're heading into prom season. We're heading into graduation, all here in a few months, or over the next few months. And it got me thinking about drinking. Drinking alcohol. Now, I'm over 21 by a few months. What?
I'm sorry. Yes, we are both over 21.
Okay. So
we're of legal age.
So going down to the Walmart of liquor stores called Total Wine is a fun thing to do, as they provide a wide variety of opportunities for us. But it got me thinking about when I wasn't quite 21 and the idea of drinking. And I will have to admit that I sure enjoyed pretending I was an adult.
Yeah.
By drinking under the age of 21.
Gotcha.
Did you?
No. I was a good boy.
In what world? Man, I'm going to... You talk about thick insulated boots.
I'm sorry. You wanted to have a serious conversation. Yes, I did. In full transparency, absolutely. Yeah, I did. I wish I didn't. But again, kind of part of the story.
Well, it got me thinking, okay, a lot of times they'll ask questions, like at the doctor's office, especially if you go to a new doctor, they always want to know, well, do you smoke? Do you drink? How much do you smoke? How much do you drink? And I go, well, I'm a social drinker.
Right.
I don't drink all the time. I don't drink every day. I will, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's probably been a few weeks since the last time I had a beer.
Okay.
But I got thinking back to when I was a teenager, when I was in high school. And I used to drink all the time.
Yeah. To
the point that you could argue that I was feeling like I had to drink.
Okay.
It wasn't, it almost became a requirement. You could probably even suggest that it was more of an addiction.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about, well, why? Why was I drinking? And I was drinking because I was a social outcast. I felt, anyway, as a social outcast. And I felt that the only way that I could fit in was to drink.
Right.
That the only way I could get people to like me, the only way that I could get girls to like me was to drink.
Yeah.
That I became a different person, and well, maybe people would like that person more than who I really was.
Right.
Which was a tall, geeky, skinny, awkward, nerdy kid.
Yeah.
I know that shocks you.
Slightly. No, what doesn't shock me is what you said, though. Because a lot of people go through that. Well, I want to be accepted.
Okay.
I want to fit in, right? The person I see in the mirror isn't who people want to hang out with, so I want to do some things that are going to get me on the in crowd, if you will. So I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna party.
Yeah, it was. Part of it was, I think I wanted to show that I was growing up, that I was becoming independent. I was, I mean, we always had, alcohol around the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't like they were, mom and dad were hiding it or forbidding us. I mean, they would go out to wine and cheese parties. Dad would always have, a beer or two coming home from work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was around us all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, I wanted to be something I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, how is that a common? I mean, honestly, I don't share a lot of this with my students. That I was kind of a squirrel back when I was in high school, because I wonder if they really understand that some of them, that most of the teachers were not straight A kids that loved school, and they dreamed of being a teacher. When they were in 5th grade kind of thing. I mean, crying out loud, if somebody told me when I was a senior in high school that I would be a school teacher, I'd beat them over the head saying, "You're full of baloney."
Yeah.
I hated school. I mean, I liked the social aspects of school, but I wasn't big into it.
Yeah.
I was far from a straight A student.
Yeah.
And so, it makes me wonder how many kids, because I know our kids do. I know they drink. They, Friday, Saturday night, just like kids have been doing since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Or at least.
Well, I mean, that's we'd be foolish to sit here and say, "Oh, that's not going on." The reality is that it is going on, very much so. It is happening, and you and I lived through that. We're sitting here having this you're talking, and I'm just listening, and I'm going to throw my dad under the bus, although we've had this conversation before. It's not like I haven't talked with him about. I was just talking to my brother Brad about this the other day, and he sent me a picture of an original the banquet Coors Light, or not Coors Light, Coors Banquet, the original Coors.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, if that doesn't bring back memories. So when we were kids, we would go to we call it the Horse. And it was in Ontario. It was like 45 minutes from, our house. And I was like 13. And that was on one of our trips out there after the Cowboys were done doing their thing. They'd go back to the barn area and they'd have some beer.
Okay.
And that was my first experience.
Mine was with Coors Light.
Oh, mine was the banquet beer, baby.
Okay.
But once it hit my lips, no, I was like, man, and when he showed me that picture, I remembered it, and I almost could taste it. And that's kind of, I think, what kind of set it, in motion. I tasted it. Now, you had mentioned that your parents had alcohol, but it seemed like you probably had conversations about it.
Kind of, but I mean, Dad would say, you'd say, "Hey, Dad, can I have a sip of your beer?" "Yeah, but just a sip."
Yeah.
And so you'd take it. It would have kind of a bitter taste.
Yeah.
But when you're, 10, 11, 12, you don't, as a parent looking now, you don't want it to taste good.
No.
If you're loving the taste of it at 10, 11 years old,
You got a problem.
Well, or one is brewing. Brewing.
I see what you did there.
Thank you.
But no, he didn't. My parents didn't have alcohol out and about, and like I rarely saw my dad drink at home. So it's not
Okay.
weird. But being the youngest of four boys, I saw a lot of that growing up.
Sure, with the old.
Again, something I mentioned. I don't know whenever, but I watched my brothers, and I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to hang out. I want to do the things that they're doing, but I could sit here and think about a handful of friends that one have died
Sure.
because of driving under the influence, or haven't died but have been behind the wheel and they caused accidents, or
Okay.
they killed someone because they were under the influence.
Well, that's kind of where I was wanting to go next, is because I was looking some stuff up. As I was thinking about this, I thought, well, I want to have something more concrete than just my thoughts and opinions on this. So I was looking at some stuff from the Mayo Clinic, because I figure, well, if it's from the Mayo Clinic, it's got to be somewhat reliable. But they were saying that there was a variety of things that can happen as a consequence. One being what you just said, alcohol-related fatalities. It happens all the time. When I was in high school, they changed the state of Texas. No, I didn't graduate from school in Texas. The state of Kansas changed a graduation requirement, or at least for where we were at. And they said that for graduation, I had to demonstrate that I could swim, because there were 3 major lakes in around our county, and there were alcohol-related deaths due to kids not knowing how to swim. So we had to demonstrate. We had a swimming test that you had to do.
Are you serious?
You had to pass a swimming test to graduate high school. And so, of course, I did. But there were so many alcohol-related accidents of high school kids going out to the lake, and they get too drunk, they'd be in the water, and they drowned. I mean, several a year. And so, but you're right. Between that, boating accidents.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Or like you're saying, you get behind the wheel. I think that's one of the things that as a teenager, I wish my parents had said more about. Because now, my friend Tom, we had this deal. We never drank and drove. When it was my turn to pull on the beer, he would hold the steering wheel.
Okay.
That way I was not drinking and driving at the same time. In my 17-year-old mind, that was brilliant.
Right.
In my not 17-year-old mind, I'm going, that was, bar none, some of the dumbest logic I've ever come up with.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, again, alcohol-related accidents. You go to, Penn State. There was a couple years ago, hazing party. Well, of course, it's technically by the Greek society, you can't haze.
Right.
But everybody knows it goes on. Well, a kid gets drunk. I mean, his blood alcohol content was like 0.4.
Wow.
And he fell down a flight of stairs and cracked his head open and died.
Oh, my gosh.
So it doesn't even have to be swimming. It doesn't have to be in a car. It's the idea that if you drink, the chances of overdoing it, especially when you're a young person, well, yeah, alcohol-related fatalities.
Right.
Talk about impacting others and consequences. One of the other things that they were talking about, and I know this seems to be common. I've heard this different times amongst some of the kids I've had come through my classes. I knew it was a big deal when I was in school, but the idea of sexual activity.
Yeah.
Well, I was too drunk. I didn't know that having sex because you got drunk.
Right.
I mean, I've heard stories. I mean, even TV shows. They'll have again in Blue Bloods, and stories like that. Kids get drunk at a party and they're fooling around because the alcohol lowers your inhibitions.
Right.
I mean, there's again frat parties. Well, why do you bring the sorority girls over? Well, sexual conquest.
Yeah.
Well, let's get them liquored up first.
Right.
So again, the chances of that happening are go way up. If you drink too much, well, then you can become addicted to alcohol. I had a kid that grew up the street. His name was Greg. And 6th grade, he was drinking alcohol.
Wow.
And I don't know how much was biological, but Greg was Native American.
Okay.
And he had a hard time. I mean, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. He was drinking alcohol all the time. He became an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. By the time we dropped out of high school, because he didn't graduate with us, and he could not shake the alcoholism.
Yeah.
And he wound up dying suicide by police.
Oh, wow.
Because he could not shake it. And again, that alcoholism, it can create a lot of issues with you at school. I mean, again, you're a teenager. You aren't thinking about, that there could be consequences. You're just going, I can drink. Mm-hmm. And I can remember kids bragging about, went to this party, went to that party. Now, I don't know if they ever did, but they sure bragged about it.
Right.
And I mean, again, I can remember there are photos in our yearbook of kids out on spring break in Florida, down here in Texas, and there's people with alcohol in the background.
Yeah.
Now, those kids weren't holding it, but you knew it was there.
Right.
And again, I mean, why do we go out to places, like South Padre Island, or, go out to Daytona Beach in Florida, or other places for spring break? It's a week-long alcohol party.
Yeah.
Whether you're in high school or college, I mean, that's spring break, baby. Mm-hmm. What was prom? Prom was all about, drinking.
Yeah.
That's why I love at our school, or here in our school district anyway, they do the breathalyzer. And then they say, once you're in, you're in. But if you leave, you can't come back in.
Right.
To discourage, a lot of that. Because looking back now, I go, my gosh. I made a lot of bad decisions.
And your inability to think clearly is out the window when you start drinking.
Oh, absolutely. Because we're trying to be grown up. We're trying to be like our parents, they're mature drinkers.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And I can even remember some of this was Shelly, with Sherry's kids. No, I haven't been drinking.
What's in your drink, buddy?
No, just ice and tea, and it's not Long Island, but it's the idea of them drinking and watching them as they came of age and trying to be adults. And so it's one of the I guess that's with all these issues. The one thing that I know my parents never did was talk. They didn't talk to me about drinking.
Oh,
they didn't.
Yeah.
There was once. There was one time that. Well, I had my room in the basement because I don't know if you have basements in California, but up in Kansas we had basements. So my room was in the basement. It was almost like I had an apartment. A separate apartment.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
I love basements, man.
Oh, I do too. Basements. I miss them. That's the only bad thing about living here in Texas. But there was one time we were headed out it was in the summer, and we were headed out to the lake to a party. And I was smuggling out a 12-pack of beer from the basement. And my dad recognized what I was doing. And he stopped me. And he said, "What do you got?" "Nothing." And so...
My shoes.
And he goes, anyway, he ultimately says, "Well, I don't think you need a 12-pack for 6-pack ought to be more than enough." And I'm going, okay, sure, thanks, Dad. But that was about the extent of it. My parents never talked to me about the dangers, about the hazards of drinking. And I don't know if they felt that it was inappropriate because, they enjoyed wine, they enjoyed beer, that it would be hypocritical. Mm-hmm. But they never sat me down. And, I think that would be something that if I was a parent, and of course, I really, with Sherry's kids, that wasn't an option because I was not a parent figure for them.
Got it.
I was dating their mom. At that time, I was just dating their mom.
Yeah.
But I never got to figure out what I would do with Eric because, of course, he didn't get to live to be that opportunity. But I mean, would you talk to Braddix?
Absolutely.
At what point would you talk to him? What would you even say to him?
Well, I tell you what, we've already had those conversations, and he's only 12.
Okay.
Both Suzanne and I will have a conversation, like not in great length, but like if we're having a glass of wine, which we sometimes have a glass of wine, and Braddix will make a comment because being a 12-year-old cool kid, "Ooh, you drinking some wine," whatever. It's we always come back to being responsible when we are drinking. Mm-hmm. I'm not drinking, 3 or 4 bottles of wine.
Right.
I'm drinking responsibly.
1 or 2 glasses.
Yeah. And so
with dinner.
Yeah, it's kind of what we talk about. And then as he continues to grow up, we will continue to have those conversations. The things that you're talking about. Here are the consequences. We just talked about an episode where we talked about choices.
Okay, yeah.
You get in a car and you've been drinking, there are consequences. And that choice to do that doesn't just impact you.
No, not at all.
So here's my stance. Don't ever get in a car if you've been drinking or with someone who has been drinking. Mm-hmm. If you are, here's the conversation I'm going to have with them. Call me. I'll come get you.
Or call Uber.
Yeah, or whatever. If you don't want to, but like I want you to know, like I remember one of my coaches, his son, same thing, similar as he got older. Is like, look, if you're going to become a man, or if you go out and you do these things, don't get behind the wheel.
No,
if no one else, just call me. I don't care what time it is. I'll come get you. And I always stuck to that. Like, okay, I'd rather him call me. Mm-hmm. Or the girl, whatever, right?
Sure.
Call. I do have 2 other kids. Then I'll have to have that conversation with as well, or other things as well. Jeez.
Good thing you got a ways.
Yeah, but again, like there's a time and a place, and now we just responsible. Just be responsible. It's about responsibility and the choice. Again, the choices you make, aren't just going to impact. Don't just impact you, but yeah, we've had that conversation.
Well, one of the things I wonder, if my parents had asked me, why did I feel it necessary to drink, would I have been totally honest with them? Because I'm not sure I was totally honest with myself as to why I drank. But if you're a kid, can you be honest with your parents? If you're a parent, can you ask the hard question of your kid of, why do you feel it necessary to drink? Yeah. And can you, as a parent, can you accept what they say if they say, well, we see you drink, so we think it's cool.
Yeah.
We think it's being what grown-ups do. Can you accept that? I don't know. Again, I'm just speaking hypothetically because I have no idea. I didn't have these conversations with my parents. I didn't have them with my stepkids. And so, therefore, it's one of these things that, again, according to the Mayo Clinic, they suggest you do is talk to your kids and ask them why do they want to drink.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they're talking, some of the other things they say include, debunk a myth that a lot of times that drinking can make them popular or make them happy. I mean, do kids really understand? Because I know I didn't. Alcohol's a depressant. If you're feeling bad, the last thing you need to be doing is getting drunk.
Right.
Because that just makes you more sad, more unhappy.
Right.
It has the opposite effect. Now, some people, they're funny. For me, it made me fall asleep. But some people, it can make them violent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're a mean drunk. So, I mean, again, talking about what alcohol does to the body, the damage it does to the brain cells, especially to young kids when their brains are kind of just developing.
They're still developing, yeah.
So, I mean, again, debunking myths, I mean, this is something I think would be really hard, but why they should not drink.
Yeah.
Give them reasons why. Especially if your family has a history of alcoholism or alcohol abuse. I had an uncle that it wasn't a good day unless he went through at least a case of beer.
Oh, wow.
Well, his son became an alcoholic and died of alcohol poisoning. So I had another friend of mine, but we were great pals going all the way back to elementary school. And he died of, alcohol poisoning. His liver shut down.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I feel kind of guilty of some of that because there was only a few of us, but every time we go out on a Friday night, Saturday night in high school, more often than not, he was with us.
Yeah.
And so, now that being said, once I turned 21, I started, my consumption went way down, and it's continuously gone down. So, but, I don't know. I think, if there's a way that you could talk to your kids about maybe not drinking so much, especially if there's a family connection to alcoholism.
Well, I think, a couple things. One, you reminded me of something, and they used to run these commercials all the time, like back in the day. This is the egg, right? This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. There was one commercial or advertisement. It was the kid who got caught smoking marijuana by his dad. And I don't know if you remember seeing that one. And the dad was pissed, and he's like, "Where'd you learn to do that? Where'd you get this? Where'd you learn how to do this?" And he's like, "I learned it from you."
Sure.
And so that's what brought. So yeah, if you're seeing your parents, or if your kids are seeing you, this is my lead up. Lead up to educate your children on alcohol. Don't, educate them on all the things that you're saying, like what it can lead to. And if there is alcoholism in the family, your risks are up, much higher. And so what's the impact? What are the implications there? And so again, having the conversation. We talk about this with mental health, right? Have the conversation. We didn't talk about when we were growing up, but we're relentless now in having that conversation because we understand the impact, right, and the importance of it. But again, growing up, we didn't talk about it. Growing up, we didn't talk about alcohol abuse, right? But again, if you're in the house and you're doing that, you're partaking, at least educate your kids.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad you brought that up about, I learned it from watching you, Dad. If you consume alcohol, it is I think you're right. I think it would be silly to tell your kids don't drink alcohol while you're sucking down a suds. You know,
Right, yeah.
if you drink, I think, but it would be important to have a conversation where you're saying, okay, if you're going to do it, let's be smart about this. I mean, there were times where my mom and dad would let us have a party at the house, but they were there, or my sister would come over and chaperone it, or knew of
Right.
what was going on. I can remember, well, okay, there were a couple times where Sherry's kids would, well, the boy, her son, would have friends come over, and there would be some drinking going on, but we were there at the house. No, we were back in the bedroom watching TV, but they, and none of the kids were driving.
Yeah.
So they'd all, you'd wake up in the morning, they're all crashed out somewhere in the house. But it was, she said, I would rather them do it at the house because now I know where they're at.
Yeah.
Not really condoning it, but know that they are going to do it regardless of what I say. So at least they're doing it where I know they're safe.
Right. That's one of those. This is maybe the situation I can control. If I permit it here, this is in my control. We can't control what they do when they're out. We could educate them and raise them, right? With a rock solid foundation. But at the end of the day, we can't really control. Again, going back to choices, right? Everyone,
Sure.
And then, who you hanging out with too? That also is going to lead into it. That's maybe a different episode. But
well, if you're talking to your kids, or if you're talking to your parents about why you drink, all right, low self-esteem, which was my case, not feeling popular, which again was my case. But the other issue would be peer pressure. You want to go to these parties where everybody's hanging out, because when I was in high school, there were guys in school when I was in high school that they made their money by throwing big keg parties. I don't know how they got away with it, but I mean, you'd show up, you'd pay, your $10, you get your solo cup, and off to the keg you go, and there'd be 300 people there.
Oh, yeah.
And there'd be a live band there, or a DJ. And I mean, there was a place called Joe's Barn. It got blown up by a tornado here a few years ago, but it was a place that, and there were parties all over, that I remember we go to, and, there'd again be 50, 100, 200, 300, 400 people there. Mm-hmm. And there's there's the football team. Well, there's the basketball team.
Right.
I mean, shoot, half your graduating class is there.
Yeah.
And so you're there. Well, what about peer pressure?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
I mean, I can tell you that when it came to drinking, there was no peer pressure. I was doing it of my own free will. Mm. There was peer pressure to smoke cigarettes. There was peer pressure to smoke dope. And I never did.
Yeah.
I never smoked cigarettes. I never smoked dope because there was always someone there, especially in the early days, that would say, "Oh, now stop. I wish somebody didn't force me to smoke. So, hey, I'm going to do for you what nobody did for me." So they would tell whoever was pushing me that, hey, let him, if he doesn't want to, then he doesn't, and let it go with that. But I mean, you think about, kids, boys, girls, whatever, especially girls, or maybe that's just being a sexist on my part, that girls would be, fall victim to peer pressure, to alcohol. But if you're a parent, how would you talk to your kid about how to handle peer pressure? Because honest to God, I have no idea how I would talk to a kid to tell how to counsel them
Yeah.
on avoiding peer pressure. You're you're at a party. Here, drink this.
I went to school with a kid, and I'm gonna lead into this, that he would go to parties, he would hang out, but he would only go for a little bit, and he would leave. He would especially leave when it started to get a little rowdy.
Okay.
He never drank.
Okay.
He never smoked. Did any of that. He would hang out. He was a football player.
Okay.
Good dude. But it was more like, hey, just, see what's going on. And then this isn't my thing, so I'm going to peace out.
Okay.
It happened all the time. And so that's where this comes in. I think he was raised right, one. But two, I think that he pre-decided, if you will. Like this, like no matter what, I don't do this. I don't partake in those things. It's like, I heard someone say, like, when they go out to eat and they eat their meal, and then the waiter or waitress comes by and says, well, would you like to try, dessert or whatever? I always say, well, I don't say, I shouldn't, or I can't really, I'm trying to watch my figure or whatever. He says, I always say, I don't do dessert. And something that's psychological, if you will, and maybe you could do the research on that later, but he had talked about this. It's a psychological thing. I don't do that. I don't partake in that. But again, going back to pre-deciding, educating your kids on the negative effects of drugs and alcohol, and pre-decide, no matter what, I'm not going to do this. No matter what, if you try and get me to do this, well, that tells me a whole lot about you and our friendship. But no matter what, if you try to get me to do something, the answer is no, because I've already pre-decided. I understand the implications it has on my life, my family's life, my friends' lives if I do something.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
That's easier said than done.
Okay, because that was going to be my next thing. You tell this to Braddix. All right. Well, then he's 16 years old. He's on the varsity. He's a sophomore on the varsity. And you got the juniors and seniors. It's after, it's after homecoming. So, you go to the homecoming dance and then the parties that are afterwards. Ox, here, have a beer. Oh, come on, everybody's doing it. His answer is going to be no, because I pre-decided. Well, you may have pre-decided as dad, but I don't know. I think it'd be tough. And I think the idea of, well, okay, sure. And you take a drink, but you don't, your lips are closed. I've done stuff like that before where
fake it, throw it over your shoulder when no one's looking.
I actually have. Or you pretend to nurse it. Oh no, yeah. I'm still pretty full. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you walk around with a whole glass of beer
all night.
Oh yeah.
You're the RN.
A few minutes ago. Oh yeah. This is like number 6. Oh man. I've done that as more of an adult.
Yeah.
Than I did at this age, because I'm fine taking a beer and nursing a beer for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's tough, but I think it's important to have these conversations. Help, talking to your children about why they want to drink. And if they're talking about peer pressure, well, how do you have that conversation like you just said? Predispose of what well, as I've been explained to me, prior planning prevents pretty poor performance.
Yeah.
Well, if you pre-plan, you have in your mind what are you going to do? You've already thought about this. You've talked about this, and again, it goes back to something we've talked about on, previous times. of with age comes wisdom, with age comes experience. So sharing with our children the idea of what to do.
Yeah.
Well, here, learn from my experiences.
Yeah.
I think being honest with your kid. I mean, showing them, support your child. At the end of the day, show them the love and support. You know, we all make mistakes. We've talked about that before. The mistakes are learning opportunities. And so, you know, if your kid comes home drunk, okay, well, wake them up early the next morning. Tell them to go mow the yard. And if they're puking while they mow the yard, well, so you do. I mean, you make them do all kinds of household chores. Yeah. Letting them sleep till 2 a.m. to sleep it off, well, that's your choice too as a parent. You get to decide how you want to respond.
Right.
I can tell you the lawn mowing was how my parents responded. But the other thing is know what your kids are doing. I mean, I think it is almost somewhere wired in the adolescent mind, sneak around your parents.
Yeah.
One of the things that Sherry's kids did or had with Sherry was a fairly open line of communication. In some ways, maybe a little too much, but we were aware.
Yeah.
Well, she was aware. She didn't share all that with me, mostly because she knew I'd fly off the handle. But, you know, knowing what was going on, and, you know, one of the things we talk about in our divorce group with, you know, when you're dealing with your ex-spouse, establish rules, have boundaries.
Yeah.
And if the kids, you know, if they're going to break break those rules, step over those boundaries, have firm consequences and say, look, I'm not going to begrudge you. If you were out till 3 o'clock in the morning, you broke curfew, that's fine. It's 6:30 and we're mowing today. Yeah. Or it's 7 o'clock. Well, we're cutting wood. Here's the chainsaw. You know, right. Nothing worse on a hangover than a chainsaw. But, I mean, there are consequences that, you know, Eric's mother, she once got drunk at 17 years old, and the very next weekend her mother had gotten her a job.
Nice.
So that was the consequence. And, I mean, but I think the other thing that we as adults, and this goes back to what you were saying with that commercial, if we as parents are drunk in front of our children, what example are we setting? If we say, well, don't be drunk, and then we do this same thing that we tell them,
or fill in the blank, you know, alcohol, drugs, right?
Practice what you preach.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a double standard, then don't expect your children to
1,000%.
Do what you say when you don't do what you say.
Going back to, they're always watching. They're always watching. Model, I don't know, model wise behavior or wise decision making.
You know what? I think I will develop something that we talk about that.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Good.
But I guess the last thing, of these things that we can do, and this was something that my parents did really well, encourage your children to have healthy relationships with good kids.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that he listens to these podcasts, but my friend Tom, we were friends going back to middle school. Because his mom and dad were involved in the church just like my mom and dad were. And so we were frequently at these evening church events.
Got it.
And once I got to drive, well, then it's kind of like, you want to get out of here?
Yeah.
I got a car.
Yeah.
And so, and here we are 40 years later, still really close.
Nice.
But we were always constantly looking out for each other.
Got it.
And we kept each other from being excessively stupid. We were still pretty stupid and did a lot of dumb stuff that I will not share publicly because I don't know if there's still a statute of limitations on some of them, but we kept each other from serious harm.
Yeah.
And I think that if you as a parent, encourage your kids to have good friends,
Right.
not ones that are getting them into trouble, but ones that are kind of helping keep them out of trouble.
Yeah. Are your friends, are the people you're hanging out with, are they helping you get to where you want to? Are they helping you grow in a positive way? Are they helping you get to where it is you want to go, wherever you want, right? Fill in the blank. Are they helping your vision come alive for whatever you want to do, right? Or are they doing the opposite thing, right? Are they taking you off course? That's something that you really have to evaluate as a kid. Mm-hmm. Who are you doing life with? Because who you do life with is going to really dictate your future.
Yeah. And it's hard to, when you are 15, 16, 17, to be thinking of the future. I know that I felt, well, nothing bad's going to happen to me. That's other people. Mm-hmm. It's that superhuman belief that we're immortal. And I get that. And I tell my seniors every time we get to this, once was spring break through the end of the year, be aware that of your surroundings and what you're doing, and be smart. And if you're going to do something stupid, don't go to the extreme of stupid. And, think about and plan what you're going to do. And I guess my biggest fear, because it happens every year, but there are a good half a dozen stories that make the news between spring break and the end of the year that I hear of. Yeah. I'm sure there's even more, but of kids dying in an alcohol-related accident and they don't graduate. Or between prom and graduation, this kid died, that kid died. I mean, graduation parties that, they got drunk and they died. Mm-hmm. They graduated Saturday. They're being buried the next Saturday. Yeah. I mean, you got your whole life in front of you. And
it really is horrible to hear that, It is. It's sad because those unfortunate deaths, right? I'm going to go out and have fun because nothing's going to happen to me. Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking about even text messaging. Well, there was a study right a long time ago that texting and driving is worse than, I don't know,
drinking and driving.
I don't know, but
no, they say it is.
I'm gonna be sending these texts because it's not going to happen to me. Right. It very well can happen to you.
Well, yeah, especially if you're doing it in front of me. I'm going to bumper car your butt into the ditch. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not true.
No, but there's a lot there's a lot that we could keep unpacking because both of us, have lived a lot of life. But again, I just keep going back to this. Again, it's easy for us to sit behind the podcast because we've done a lot of life. We've been on quite a journey. But talking to a 16, 17, 8-year-old right now who's they're not one. Oh yeah, okay, right. But again, that's the reality of the situation. The choices that you make, right? If you're going to partake in that. There's consequences.
One of the teachers there at the high school, he has this sign up in his room and he says, make sure the choices you make today are the choices you can live with tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I was not thinking of tomorrow when I was a junior, a senior in high school, making the decisions I did. Yeah. And so, but I know where that led to. And I wish my parents had talked to me because I might have made different choices. Right. And like I say, Sherry had some of these conversations with her kids, and they still made some bad choices,
Yeah.
but not to the level of risk that I did.
Right. Yeah. Have deep conversations with your kids. Parents, have deep conversations with your kids about the various topics that we discuss. And for this one, it's alcohol. Have conversations with them, educate them on it, right? And that's a big piece. Don't shy away from anything. Here's positive, man. You could have fun. You could, right?
Sure.
Right. And then here's the negatives to it. Like, you provide both. It's, be transparent, effectively communicate.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of the things that I wish my parents had talked to me about were done because they were not sure how to talk about
Sure.
it. How they were afraid. I mean, as a kid, I ain't talking to my parents about that.
Right.
I would talk to, my closest friends about everything under the sun.
Yeah.
But I would share very little of that with my parents. I get it. I mean, I get that through adolescence, there is that strong bond between friends that supplants parents.
Right.
But as parents, I don't know. I think the stronger that relationship and the more open that communication can be, well, then I think the easier that transition is from adolescence into adulthood might be, and reduce the risks and the horrible consequences of some of the, well, as I would call, brain damage decisions I made.
Right. Yeah. Throughout the transitional years, parents, equip your teens with tools to help them be successful, right? Again, have that conversation. And then you said something, right? A lot of the kids aren't going to talk to, in what I do, specifically, with suicide prevention, they're not going to talk to the adults. They're going to talk to their peers.
Yes.
So if they're talking to the peers, which they're going to do, right? Let's equip our kids with who you should be doing life with. Mm-hmm. Who's the who's in your life?
Well, it goes back to, again, that who are you, that healthy friendships, people that build you up and don't tear you down or lead you down the primrose path to bad decisions that, well, wind you up in jail or worse.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think this is a profound episode because it's a real thing. The reality is kids drink. And kids make stupid decisions and they go overboard, and some of those situations, or that some kids don't come back.
Yeah. And these are the kinds of things that I wish we as teachers could talk to the kids at school, but then at the same time, as teachers, how much do you share about yourself?
Right.
Because we don't have that kind of training. I mean, I do because of the classes I'm taking, but I don't know. I
well, if anything, and I know that we try to be as transparent as we can, and obviously we don't unpack our whole life story on here, but the reality is we have lived some life, and we're trying to equip families with tools to help them thrive, right? But help them, help me, Rod. Help me right now. No, just again, like, have that conversation, communicate, right, and just develop those relationships within your dynamic there. I don't know. So I'm going to shut up.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah, because we're pushing the end of our allotted time. Don't want to go over. So anyway, let's go check out what's in the fridge. There might be a couple of cold ones. Okay, maybe a wrong thing to say. Hey, you know what? This has been a whole lot of fun. Until next time?
Yeah, it has been fun. Until next time.
All right. Well, I'm Rod.
And I'm Bryce.
Ciao.